So, a very good evening to each and every one of you. I am Francis Fernandez, co-founder and chairman of Goa Rainbow Trust. Today, we are going to be talking about quite a sensitive topic. So, I'm going to give you a small trigger warning right now itself before we start. If any of you all feel uncomfortable with any of the topics, then you can, leave the meeting also for that particular amount of time and join back in as per your comfort. Lareina will also be putting out a disclaimer later on the slides. So today's topic is a very sensitive yet a very important topic, something that is not often spoken about, which I feel does need to be spoken about. Today we are going to be talking about sexual abuse and its impact on silent victims. So first we will look into what is sexual abuse, and we will also see what are the impacts and how one can cope with, how a particular victim can cope with a incident, and also we will see how we as individuals can, support them or help them in some way or the other. Okay, so today we have with us our guest speaker, Ms. Lareina D'Souza. So Lareina is a psychologist and counselor. She's based in Margao, Goa. She is specialized in child psychology and is also a play therapy practitioner and a solution-focused therapy practitioner. She is currently working towards a certification for animal-assisted therapy. She also ensures that her practice is queer affirmative, inclusive, and that it accepts and respects diversity. So thank you so much, Lareina, for joining us today. We are really looking forward to today's session, and on to you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Francis. So before we go ahead, I prefer usually that, like whatever sessions I have, that they are a bit interactive. And of course, you can keep your video off if you want to interact also. And as per your comfort though, if you just want to sit back and listen also, that's completely fine. Okay. Okay, so as Francis has already told you that the content in this session, it might be a bit triggering because it is quite a sensitive topic. So if any point that you feel that it's like too much and you can't take it, you might get triggered. Please feel free to remove yourself and just maybe mute the session or leave the session for a while. And then once you feel like you're able to cope with it, you can always join back. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about what is sexual abuse. So if anyone over here would like to give in their input about what they feel is sexual abuse. Is there anyone who would like to say something?
If you can leave your comments in the chat, or if you're comfortable, you can even unmute and
Okay.
say.
Okay, so I hope I'm saying this right. Sharbu, is that right? Okay, so
Sharbo.
So yes, so that's very correct, Sharbu. That is sexual activity without consent. So sexual abuse refers to any behavior that is forceful or coercive, wherein the person is unable to say no, or even though they've said no, they've still gone ahead and done something, or wherein the consent that is given is not valid. Okay, so we'll be talking more about what is invalid consent. All right. So then what constitutes sexual abuse? So as we already said, it is any sexual behavior that is not that you didn't consent to and which is forceful or coercive. So at what point do we start considering that something is abuse and it's not okay, and at what point do we say that it's wrong or it's harmful? So usually what happens is that when people think about sexual abuse, they go directly to the extreme. Okay, it's in the comfort zone. Okay, so Shadbu, can you tell us a little, can you explain a bit more about that? What you mean by that?
Yes. So, hello. Yeah.
Yes.
So, what I mean is when I said that is so it all depends on how much I'm okay with. So, let's say if someone I'm not okay with, even someone coming very close to me or keeping a hand on the shoulder, or let's say keeping a hand on the somewhere on my face, or let's say on my legs. It can start from that level, or it can even start from giving wrong actions, like
Yeah.
all those vulgar things
Yes.
can
You're
start from
absolutely
there,
right. Yeah.
and it can end up to, I mean, it can end all the way up to you know rape.
Yeah.
But yes, if it is about abuse, it can start from there. It all depends. Like, I can feel that, okay, I can sit on someone's shoulder and I can be okay with it. But maybe Francis might not be okay, like, just because I can see him. I'll give his example, and I know him personally. So he might be someone that he's not even okay with doing a handshake. So even if I'm doing a forceful handshake with him, that is, I would say, in ways, abuse.
Yes.
Sexual abuse would be, giving him signals like, "Arey, kaisa hai?" Like, we know on that level. So yeah, that's what I feel. That's where it starts.
Yeah. So, Sharvi, you're absolutely right. So, even things like, as Sharvi said, shaking your hand, if you don't want your hand to be shaken, you can usually tell if somebody is not okay with it by their body language, or they might just, instead of putting their hand out, they might put their hands up like this. But if you still forcefully go and take their hand, that is abuse. Okay, so even things like making comments about somebody, saying something about their appearance, or making a comment about their body, is inappropriate, and it is sexual abuse. Okay, so there are types of sexual abuse. So when we think of sexual abuse, usually we directly think about physical, like the physical type of sexual abuse. So that inappropriate touching, something that you just don't want anybody touching your leg or anything like that. We think that usually it is that, and we usually think that it is only like these particular areas of our body. But any part of your body you don't want to be touched, somebody touches you, it is sexual abuse. Okay, any forceful kissing, groping. Okay, at the very extreme, as Sharbu already said, there is rape. Okay, then there is something known as covert sexual abuse, wherein the person doesn't know that they are being sexually viewed by another person. So this can be voyeurism, wherein somebody is looking at someone when they're undressing, or without their consent or without their knowledge at all. Stalking or being followed, but the person doesn't know that they're being followed or stalked, that is also sexual abuse. When any videos or photos are taken without anyone's consent, that also comes under sexual abuse. Then there is also visual abuse, when you are forcefully exposed to something that you don't want to see. So, so exhibitionism comes under that, wherein you're forced to see somebody's body, or them doing engaging in something wherein you've not consented to it. Okay, even exposure to sexual material. For example, if somebody shows you something pornographic and you didn't ask them to see that, or they didn't ask you and it was just come and put in front of you, that is also sexual abuse. Okay, then verbally we have lewd remarks, jokes, which happen very, very frequently, which society has kind of said that it is kind of okay, just overlook it. That also is actually sexual abuse. Okay, so any jokes about somebody, like in a sexual way, about their sexuality, comments about somebody's body, asking them things about their body, that is also sexual abuse. And then there are also components that come under spirituality or culturally or religious. Okay, so these are things like child marriage. So a child cannot consent to getting married. They cannot consent to any sort of sexual activity. And there is also genital mutilation, and there are certain puberty rituals also, not all. There are some which which have like a lot of sexual stuff in it, wherein the person has, a lot of times now, especially children, reach puberty quite early before they can consent. So that is also sexual abuse, that they are being put through that without them actually giving consent. Okay, so is everyone okay with that, or does anyone have any questions about this?
I have one question.
Yes.
So I guess we all know, but then certain practices, religious practices, when you say uh, concerned to certain specific religion, when they are happening even at a very, you know, infant age, are they even considered under abuse, or are they under constitutional laws? They are kept away from that.
Okay, so I think that is something that I like. This is what ideally we would have to like have a we would want to have a black and white answer, but right now that answer is not there. But honestly, if you go to see, it kind of is abuse. Okay, it might not kind. It might not really be like. As you say, like the parents might not intentionally do it, okay, but if you change your child's body without asking them, or without them giving you permission, which you cannot an infant cannot do, so they have to live their life with that consequence, right? You've not really asked them. So in a way, yes, it is abuse. Okay, we will, it's kind of a sensitive topic because it is a religious thing, but unfortunately and legally, as you say, also the thing is, things might be legal, but that doesn't mean that it's not abuse. Like,
Right.
for example, you see marital rape is legal. In a lot of places, there is no law against date rape. There are no laws protecting men from abuse, or besides, a certain type of rape, like other rapes are not recognized. I'm just trying not to say things in detail because I don't want to trigger anybody. So those things might be like lawful or not lawful, but they still come under abuse. Does
Okay.
that answer it? Okay. Does anybody have any inputs or thoughts about this, the types of sexual abuse, and at what point something constitutes sexual abuse? All right. So, as we spoke before about consent and sexual abuse, when you're thinking about sexual abuse, actually, a lot of people feel that now it's very difficult to actually know what is okay and what is not okay, because somebody might make a big deal about it. And then, how do we know? And now, kind of, the romance is dead. You have to ask everything, before you do anything. But it's actually quite simple that if somebody has not explicitly given you consent, okay, and if the consent is not valid, then it is sexual abuse. Okay, so by explicit consent, I mean, like, if somebody has actually not given you has not told you that they want something, or they are okay with doing something, then they are probably not okay with it. So if somebody says maybe, if somebody does not respond, if somebody says like, oh, okay, sometimes they say okay, and then you can see in their body language that they are not really okay with it. So those may be situations wherein they are unable to say no because there is some sort of power imbalance. So they have no choice. So when there is no choice in the matter, that is not valid consent. Okay, the consent is invalid. So that's why now more and more people are realizing that when somebody is drunk and something happens, like some sexual activity takes place, that is not something that was consented to. In a lot of places it is now illegal because it is considered rape. And this is the same reason wherein children cannot give consent, because children do not understand the whole the process of what is happening. Also, with a child and an adult, there is always an unequal power balance. Okay, so it's not you cannot say that a child readily engaged in something, because there is always that level of authority that an adult has that a child doesn't have, that an adult has some sort of power over a child, whether it is physical or any other way, monetary. Okay, so their consent is not valid. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. So that's the basic, the very basic thing, that sexual abuse is behavior that wherein there is no valid consent, and uh, there was no explicit consent given. Okay. So let's look at some of the stats that I'll be speaking mostly about statistics pertaining to the LGBTQIA community, because I think that we usually speak about sexual abuse. We speak about it, but we don't really focus on the impact that it has on the LGBTQI community. So I'll give you the stats like pertaining to this community only. So, some studies have found that transgender people are more than 4 times likely to experience sexual assault than cisgender people are. 1 in 4 transgender women, they believe that the sexual abuse that was caused towards them was a hate crime, but this is in comparison to only 1 in 10 cisgender women who have felt that the sexual abuse towards them was a hate crime. Okay, so they conducted another study in a university wherein they found that 21% of the students who identified as either transgender, gender queer, or gender non-conforming have been assaulted. Many studies have found that 44% of women, lesbian women have experienced sexual abuse in their lives. 61% of bisexual women have experienced sexual abuse in their lives, and 47% of bisexual men have experienced sexual abuse in their lives. So as you can see, this is a big number, and it's quite alarming that it's 4 times more. 4 times more is it's a big thing. Okay, and it's something we really need to take seriously, and something that is not yet being taken seriously. Okay, so as our session is titled "The Silent Victims," okay, so would anybody like to give their inputs on what they feel a silent victim is?
Someone,
Yes.
please go ahead.
Yeah, so someone who might a not like someone who might not be able to speak out. Now that not being able to speak out can be due to many reasons, as to not finding the right words, not knowing what to say, what exactly is happening, or not being able to trust someone. Could be many things, but someone who's not able to say it out.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely well worded, Shargu. Okay, Samiksha, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. And also, because the individual, himself also, they might not have processed the whole event that has taken place. So, at times, even though we have a lot of knowledge and we understand what's happening isn't right, but it takes a lot of time to process, and that is also one of the main reasons many people, take a lot of time to bring up the courage to say it.
Yes.
And it can take like maybe a week. Some people might say after a year, or some people might even take 20-25 years. You don't know. So
yeah, absolutely. So both of you have given like amazing points. So as they've already said, silent
Yeah.
victims. Yeah, sorry, Francis.
Add something. So I think of course the same thing, and they're not able to say because they're probably in denial that it even happened to them.
Yes, that's a very
Because
good point.
it's like they get a shock. It's like they're in shock that it happened, and they're pushed into denial that it even happened. Like something like that even happened.
Yes. Also, another thing,
And
Francis. Yeah.
yeah.
Go on. So, sorry, go on.
Yeah, and I think another reason many of people tend to remain silent, especially a lot of people from the queer community, is because of the stigma associated with being queer in the first place. So, like, many people will be like, "Oh, you wanted it, that is why it happened." You why did you go into it? There's a lot of victim shaming, victim blaming that happens. So that's one reason probably why they end up, with silent.
And another thing also, Francis, to add to that is a lot of people are not sure. They don't really know whether they have been abused or not, because when usually when abuse is spoken about, it's just spoken in in a very straightforward way, that it can happen only in this way, and it can only happen between a man and a woman. It cannot happen in any other way. So because of that, they themselves don't know that they are victims. They always have that kind of feeling that something was wrong, but then they don't know whether it is like what you say considered enough. Like, did it really happen? And then in a way, as you say, they kind of go into denial and they try to tell themselves that this isn't actually a big deal when it really is a big deal.
And to also and to also add on to this, when you say a man and a woman thing, even if, let's say, it is between a man and a woman, we always assume that it's always the woman who is the victim and the man
Yes.
who is the culprit. Let's call the opposite of it to be the culprit. So, however, if you consider it that practically, or if you want to put it that way, in a theory, it cannot really be that way. It has a very big chance that it can actually be the opposite way. In situations, it can actually be that the man is the victim and the lady is the culprit. So, we always have the thing that, oh, I was a man, how can I, say that I was raped by a girl? That's
Exactly.
not possible. Kind of a thing. That is
Definitely.
another thing that can stop someone from saying, what if I tell my friends that I was raped by a girl? They'd be like, how is that even possible?
True, definitely. And also, what happens is because we have this idea in our heads that it can happen only in this way, and a man is always the perpetrator, people tend to then make jokes, which joke should not be made. It's not a funny thing at all, but that happens, and then the person is just further shamed and silenced and kind of totally gaslighted from the whole, experience. So those are, so then I think you'll have already answered this question about whether silence is a choice. So a lot of times silence is actually not a choice. There is no choice but to be silent. The reasons why most you all have already spoken about most of those is because of the kind of oppressive systems that we have in place that does not allow us to come out and say what has happened. First of all, we already spoke about how when we think about sexual abuse, we only think about it as rape. We don't see the other things that make people uncomfortable, that make them feel like they've been violated. For us, we only consider that if rape has happened, that is sexual abuse, or somebody has been inappropriately touched and that person is a woman, only then it is sexual abuse. But actually, a lot of things do come under sexual abuse. So when we see, heterosexism in place, we see that institution oppressing us, oppressing people by not allowing any other definition of sexual abuse other than, as Sharbu already said, a man abusing a woman and the perpetrator being a man. Okay, so actually in reality that there can be a lot of different dynamics that can take place. The victim and the perpetrator might be of any gender or any sex, and it doesn't have to be rape. It can be the other things also that we spoke about. Okay. Secondly, these systems that are in play, they give some people more power over the other people. So somebody who is heterosexual will probably have their experience validated more than somebody who is not. Uh, we also, even if we look at sexism, we will because of sexism we will think that men are more powerful. They are the ones who can cause aggression. Women cannot do anything like that. But actually in reality that's not the case. Even sometimes we see that there is a bit of a double standard wherein sometimes something is said about one gender and that's not okay, but then if you say it to some other gender, that is okay. So it's okay to say something to one group of people, but it's not okay to say another one. That's not equality, right? That's not how it should be. And another thing also that makes somebody keep quiet and doesn't give them a choice to speak in the matter is the stigma and the shame that was already spoken about, wherein if they speak about it they will maybe be mocked. A lot of times there's this whole purity culture kind of makes them be seen as something that is like being, a lot of people use the word used, which I don't like that word at all. Even though it was actually not anything that they did on their part. Okay. Also, see, irrespective of who has done the crime, the repercussions of it always fall onto the victim. So the victim has to bear the physical repercussions, the mental repercussions, the emotional repercussions, and the stigma also that comes from society. So a lot of most of the time, actually, the predator, the perpetrator doesn't really doesn't really bear anything. So that's a lot of load for somebody to carry. And the minute that they speak out, society is also involved, and then it doubles. Okay. And then lastly, also there is a question of is if they speak out, is that actually going to help them? Do they feel that it's going to help them, or do they feel that actually it's just going to cause them more trauma? If they speak out, are people actually going to listen? And are institutions actually going to help them? Are the police going to help them? Are there laws in place that are actually going to protect them and say that something was done? Or is it just going to be like, no, this law is not yet in place, so what they did was wrong, it was wrong, but we can't do anything about it? Okay, so that is also one of the reasons that people stay silent. And as Samiksha also said, that a lot of times they need more time to process it. So they're not ready yet to speak about it. And maybe if they speak about it right now, it might cause them a lot of harm. They really need time to process what is happening. Okay, so some of the impacts that sexual abuse may have. So physically, it might result in unwanted pregnancies. Uh, Again, now the whole brunt of the unwanted pregnancy has to be borne by the victim. Even if they have to go ahead and they have to get an abortion itself can be a very traumatic experience. So that again, they have to bear it. There are a lot of countries where, irrespective of how you have fallen pregnant, getting an abortion is illegal. So they have to resort to what do you say, unsafe methods to get an abortion. So that also is quite it's not a nice thing at all. And even if they, supposing they have to somehow go through the pregnancy and have that child, it's not really the best way to bring up a child. So yeah, so the whole, again, the whole repercussion of the sexual abuse falls on the victim. Again, we see with STDs, there's first of all a lot of misinformation and stigma surrounding STDs. To add to that, if somebody has to manage an STD throughout their life for something that they was forced on them, that is like added burden on them. Uh, okay, so unwanted pregnancies, STDs, and then we'll start looking at more of the mental health aspects of it. So depression is one thing that can happen, especially wherein the person feels that they have no choice at all and they can't get justice at all. It'll feel like a dead end, and they'll start to feel very hopeless. And because they feel like nothing can happen about it, they start to feel very helpless. They might also start feeling guilt, not because they have done something wrong, but because they might start thinking of ways that they could have avoided it, when actually there was no way that they could have avoided it. Also, one of the symptoms of depression is inappropriate guilt. So because of the other symptoms of depression, they might start feeling guilt and they will start blaming themselves. Okay. To add to that, unfortunately, if they do happen to tell somebody, a lot of times what people tend to say is, you shouldn't have gone over there, you shouldn't have been wearing that, because you were doing that, because you were doing that, that might have happened, because you were wearing that, that might have happened. You might have given them the wrong impression. So that again adds to their feelings of self blame and faulting themselves on something that was actually not their problem, not their fault. Second thing is that they might develop an anxiety disorder or PTSD. So because of this incident, what happens is that they will be in a constant state of vigilance, and they will constantly be worrying and thinking about how something might go wrong and how something like this might happen again. Okay, so with PTSD, a lot of the victims will get flashbacks, nightmares, uncontrollable thoughts, and memory issues. They might even get OCD, wherein they start having intrusive thoughts and intrusive images, and which they then cope with using compulsive behaviors. Okay, now all this can also lead to a higher suicide risk if the person just cannot bear what is happening and they feel it is too much for them. there is a they are at a higher risk of suicide. A lot of sexual abuse victims do die by suicide because they feel that nobody understands them. They're never going to get justice, and the feeling itself after the abuse is so terrible that they feel that they cannot bear it at all. Okay, another thing that a lot of people don't speak about when we speak about sexual abuse, the impact of sexual abuse, is something known as dissociative disorders. So, dissociative disorders is when somebody feels a sense of detachment from their body. They might have memory loss. They might feel that they are not really in the world. They might feel like whatever's going around them is kind of like a movie, or they might feel like they're having an out of body experience. A lot of times, they might suddenly not suddenly take on some other personality. Unfortunately, with dissociative disorders, there is a lot of, again, misinformation going around. I don't know if anyone here has watched the movie Split. So that was about a dissociative disorder, and it was shown in such a way wherein the person became a monster, and something like that. So if you show that kind of thing to people, people have the idea in their mind that this is what it is. They start getting scared of the person. So then, how does the person get help? Because then even professionals are watching this, and they also think that this is what happens. So this kind of misinformation, it really is not good for them at all. Okay. So now, does anybody else want to add something about the impact that it could have?
Yeah, I think when it comes to mental health, a lot of the impact that it has on a lot of victims, maybe not silent victims, especially victims who, take it to court to fight it out. They have to go through that entire repetitive process of reliving the experiences, those traumatic experiences, which again affects
Yes.
their mental health.
Yeah, so it re-traumatizes them. You're right.
Another thing that I feel, that might affect someone is, to put it in a simple word, trust issues. Like, if something has happened with me and I'm like, I go and tell someone, and, said something like this happened, and nahi, nahi, teko kuch to galat laga. You felt it wrong. So then you start developing a trust issue in you. Ki people are not going to understand me. They don't know what's happening with me. They're not going to trust me. So in that way, people will again start, that trust issues is going to start affecting their relations even in future, because they will have that pre-assumption, no one understands me, no one trusts me. So they will not even try to speak out in
Yeah.
future. That will put them into silent victims, and they will not even try to build a relation, because they'll have that pre-assumed thought in their mind that they will not be trusted.
Very true. Also, what sometimes on the same topic of trust, what happens is they start getting really scared that every person that they meet is going to harm them. And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
so a lot of times, they are told that this is like irrational, but actually, you can't really call them irrational because something so traumatic has happened to them. How can you actually call them irrational? So again, as you said, Sharbu, that whole thing about, no, it's not going to happen like that. Why are you thinking like that? It happened to you once, it doesn't mean happen again. So they don't feel understood, and again, more trust issues.
Yeah, and I think like with those trust issues, they end up like not trusting even like professionals in a way. It like kind of restricts them from seeking help.
Mm-hmm. True, true. I think many times also they also could be scared that maybe the professional is going to not see my view and start blaming me again. Unfortunately, you can't even say that that has not happened any time, that a professional
And
has never. Yeah, go on, Sharpu.
and when it comes to about professionals, and especially, as we put the LGBTQ thing, one very big risk that comes into speaking for LGBTQAI people is that, they are not sure if the front professional is someone who is LGBTQAI friendly or not friendly.
Mm-hmm.
I might feel that okay, the front person is very, it's friendly. They are a psychologist. They are a professional. They are going to understand me. And then the next thing, I'm going to open up myself, and then the next thing, they are going to be like, "Nay, nay, you being a gay is a mental disorder. I'll give you this medicine, and then from tomorrow you'll be a straight as gay," which is obviously bullshit. But well, that's it.
Definitely, yeah,
So
definitely.
that's
So
another risk, something that that will stop them. Add on, they have trust issues. That's gonna again take them to a professional, who's not LGBTQI specialist, and then that's gonna add on to the trust issues.
definitely, and that does happen. Okay, so it's not like I'm not going to say that people who are psychologists or psychiatrists or doctors, they don't do this kind of thing. A lot of them still do. So it's not. It's honestly not something that doesn't happen. So I think one thing though that can be done is that this is not told to people, that they have the right to directly ask the person before they start a session whether they are affirmative or not, or whether they are LGBTQI friendly or not, so that you have full rights to do that. So before starting a session, always ask the person, are you not? And if they are not, then don't go ahead with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can ask them whatever you want beforehand. Like, they have to answer you, and if they don't answer you, then that's kind of a red flag. So yeah.
Yeah. So, in case anyone is looking, since we're talking about queer affirmative professionals, especially counselors, if any of you are looking for, a list of people, you can check out our website. We have listed people on there. Lareina is one of them on that list. So do check it out.
Yeah, it's very important that you know beforehand, honestly, if especially there's something that is sensitive to you and is likely to come up, during a session, whether it is your sexuality or something else, ask them beforehand. You have full rights to do it. It's within your rights. Okay, then speaking about who must break the silence, so what do you feel? Whose responsibility is it to break the silence about this?
I think it stems with society because that's kind of where most starts. And it starts like, I mean, when we talk about society, it starts with each and every one of us individually.
Yeah, definitely. So a
So
lot. Yeah, go on, Shadhu.
I would say it's more like a 50-50 thing. The responsibility is divided in two parts. One part of it, or rather, I would say it is actually 70-30. 70 part is the society in itself, because we need to make arrangements, or we need to make places where someone who is suffering can come out and talk safely. Like, when the LGBT was not legal in India, we had queer societies, we had tribes, and we had different organizations where someone could be themselves and come out without actually risking their identity. So that way, that's the 70 part of it. And 30 part of it is everyone understanding one simple thing, that how much of a bad it is. I can have someone I can talk to. I should have, and always keeping this one friend, or this someone in your life with whom you can basically talk any bullshit. Like, something that I might find as simple and as dirty and as complicated as anything in my life, but I can be like, okay, I can trust this person, and no matter what it is, I can talk to this person. So
Okay,
it's that 70-30.
that's a very nice way to put it, Sharu. So I what you said is what both of you have said is right. So uh, the onus of breaking the silence should not fall on the victim or the survivor, whatever is the preferred word. Uh, it lies, in more than just that. As Shalbu said, there are it should be also the work of organizations, and as Francis also rightly pointed, it's up to each one of us to do something to break the silence. There are a lot of things that we do that we don't realize contributes to the silence. So what we usually say is that if something happens to somebody, they must go and they must seek justice. But for justice to be sought, the environment has to be such that justice will be given and it will be taken seriously. So all of us have that role to play within that, making that atmosphere such that justice will be sought, can be sought rather. So how to break the silence? Okay, first, a very common thing that happens that all of us can stop doing is stop making jokes, and if somebody makes the joke, stop laughing at the jokes, because jokes will only be made until people think that it is funny. So the simplest thing to do is, don't laugh at the joke. If you are in the it's not always what you say practical to tell somebody to no, speak up and stop that person. That honestly requires a bit of privilege and power. Okay, but if you do have that privilege, you do have that power, you are in that kind of frame of that state of in your life wherein you can tell them that that's not something that's funny, then please do that. Second thing is, when we are creating safety, what Shardhu said earlier was, something that comes into play here, that when somebody tells somebody something, they usually tell them all these kind of things that, whatever, it's not a big deal and you're making a big thing out of it. And then the person doesn't trust you anymore. So a very simple thing is listen. Okay, don't advise. All of us have a tendency of wanting to say something when somebody tells us something, but what is more helpful is to just listen, because this person probably doesn't have anybody else that's going to listen to them, and the fact that they've come to you shows that they trust you, and they believe that you are somebody who can help them. So just listening to them actually is one of the biggest thing that you can do for somebody to help them process what they're going through and help them kind of move forward from what has happened. Okay, the third one also, again, as I spoke about, might not be like practical in every situation, that you can just go and start calling on people and telling them that don't do this, don't do that. You also have to think about yourself. But if you are in a position wherein you can tell somebody that what you're doing is abusive, then please do it. Please tell somebody. I see right from when kids are really small, this happens with kids a lot. They don't want to hug someone, and the parents or the elders around will be like, no, you're so bad, you have to do it. That's not a nice thing. So if you do see the situation and you can call it out and say that it's okay if they don't want to hug somebody, you shouldn't force them. It starts over there. And also telling the person who is kind of bearing the brunt of it, that if you don't want to do that, you're not at fault. If you don't want to sit on somebody's lap, or you don't want to kiss them, or you don't hug them, you don't have to do it. And then another thing is to shift the responsibility from the victim to the perpetrator. So a lot of times what happens is that the minute we hear something has happened, we start thinking about all the ways that this thing could have been avoided. So avoidance is definitely one strategy that people are using for these kind of things not to happen. But it shouldn't be that we have to avoid something and we are made responsible to avoid it when you are the victim, right? It shouldn't be your responsibility. The responsibility should fall on the perpetrator, and we need to hold the perpetrators accountable. So the narrative should shift from they went out at night, or they were wearing those kind of clothes, to these people shouldn't have been touching them or shouldn't have been saying anything to them. It was totally inappropriate and it was abusive. Okay, so what to do now? I already spoke about listen when somebody comes and speaks to you, but what else would it be good for you to do? So the first thing is to respect their confidentiality. So what happens is, a lot of time when somebody tells you something that is really big and really heavy, you have this thing that I have to tell somebody else. And a lot of times it's not out of like some malintention or something. You're not going out to hurt somebody. A lot of times the person feels that if I tell somebody else, that other person can help me. But what happens is the victim might not be ready for it yet. And doing so, going and telling other people, trying to bring them justice, it might be a good intention, but it might actually harm the victim. So don't do that. Whatever they are okay with, respect that. So if they say like, I don't want to speak about it yet to other people, I don't really want to go out and try right now to tell everybody what has happened, then respect that, because they know like at that moment what they can handle. Second thing is, don't push for details. There is a great myth going around. I think Francis also has spoken about this, about the person going into the court and having to keep speaking about it and then getting re-traumatized. So there is this great myth going around that the more somebody reveals to you, that will help them. That's not true, because every time you speak about something or you remember something, your brain re-experiences it in a way wherein they feel like it is reality. So the person, if you push somebody more than they can handle, it's just going to re-traumatize them. So don't really ask them any details, just listen to what they're saying, and that's it. Don't force them to speak about it. Third thing is assure them it's not their fault. Sometimes, we even feel that we might also feel like it's not their fault, but we don't say it to them because we think that they already know that it's not their fault. But actually, when you speak to a lot of victims, you will see that they do blame themselves, and they have like a very, what do you say, a very like a turning point for them is when somebody tells them that it's not your fault, that what you did, whatever happened, I mean, you didn't do anything. Whatever happened, it was the other person's fault. They shouldn't have done it. Okay, so do make it a point to reassure them that it's not their fault. Okay, and as we already spoke about it before, listen and don't advise. Okay, so does anyone have anything else that they feel, could be helpful to do when somebody confides in you about such a sensitive experience that might have happened?
Yeah, so I have one thing that I don't know, I can say, I can add on, or it's
Yes,
a
please do add
question.
on.
Yeah, so a question would be that, as you say that, don't, don't ask for more information or don't do something like that. However, again, when we are saying listening, a major part of listening is actually the front person opening up. So how do we
Huh.
create an environment, or how do we, when I said that 70-30 thing, so how
Mm-hmm.
do we become a part of that 70% where we can create an environment where a person, any XYZ person, like even a stranger,
Mm-hmm.
can come to us and talk. Like, when, like,
Yeah.
I say, I'm a Hindu, so I'm going to quote a Hindu thing over here. So, when we see a Shiv temple, we
Mm-hmm.
don't feel that, should I go to the Shiv temple? Will I be kicked out if I go to this temple? That can be a random temple of some personal person who has opened it in his own garden. But we are like, Arey, it's a Shiv mandir, then I can go there. So, I have a comfort zone over there
Okay.
because I have that trust. So how do we create? But then no one is coming to me and telling me, oh, please come to this temple. Or
Mm-hmm.
there's no banner telling that welcome with two hands joined in a namaste. So how do we create that unspoken environment where even a stranger, even a random person can come to us or come to anyone for that matter and speak out in case they want to speak out?
Okay, so what I meant about the details part, first of all, I meant like don't be forceful about it. Okay, like if somebody is telling you something and they're okay with telling some, there are people have different degrees of what they're okay speaking, like talking about. Some people might be okay with like talking about things and telling you exactly how it happened. Some people might just not be able to, the words don't come out of their mouth. So what I meant is like don't force somebody who cannot give you details or is not ready to give you details. Don't force them to tell you, because we just feel that talking about it is going to talking about it. But what I meant by saying that also is talking about things in detail, like somebody did this first and then they did that and then they did that and then I did that. That might not be comfortable for them. Okay, but as you said about the listening part, we can listen without asking them for details. Okay, that is completely fine. If somebody also wants to come and tell you and they are comfortable telling with you, that's fine. Like if they themselves want to tell you whatever it is in detail, that's fine. But you shouldn't be the one who's like forcing them and probing them, like, no, you tell me more, I want to know what happened, because then I will whatever, do that to that other person and all. That's the thing that is like not helpful. A lot of times also when people are trying to like they know both the people and then they just can't believe that the perpetrator did that, then they'll ask, but how did he do this and how did he do that, and then that ends up, first of all, the person is re-traumatized, and then again that whole trust thing comes into play, that I'm not being believed. Shagu, again, the last part I didn't get of your question about creating the space,
Yeah.
right, where somebody can come.
So, so what I mentioned is,
Hmm.
so when I said, the 70-30 thing, 70% part of the
Yeah.
society has to make an environment where they are trusted, or where, if I something has happened to me, I can trust someone and actually speak out when I want to, if I want to.
Okay.
And I gave you the example of a temple
Yeah.
or a church for a Christian, or for anyone for that matter. So when we go to a religious place, we are not scared that, what if I'm kicked out of that place? What if I'm, someone tells me I'm not allowed over there? We just walk into that place. In majority of the cases, 80% of the time, we have that trust that we are not going to be kicked out, we are not going to be disrespected, we are not going to be insulted. So how do places, or how do organizations or people make themselves more comfortable, so
Okay.
that without saying, see, when I'm entering a church, the pastor is not coming to me and telling me that, oh, please come into my church. When I'm entering a temple, no one is coming, the pandit is not coming to me and telling me, please come into my temple. But I have a trust, an
Okay.
unspoken trust. So
Okay.
how do I as a person, or I as an head of an organization, or I as, a part of an organization, an office or anything, make that unspoken environment where someone feels safe to talk, and
Okay.
someone knows that they have that trust that they can talk if they want to, when they want to.
Okay. Okay. So, Sharma, I'll give you the example of the church thing that you spoke about. Okay. I'll say church only because I'm not very sure what happens in other institutions. Okay. Say there are two churches. Okay. So I will say maybe Kavalosim Church, where I'm from, and then Margaon Church. Okay. I have the means to go to both churches. Okay. But I went to Kavalosim Church once, and I found that when I went, the priest spoke about, he gave a sermon, and then he did a lot of victim blaming in the sermon. He said like a lot of stuff that was like homophobic, transphobic, a lot of victim shaming, maybe a lot of slut shaming also in the church. Okay, I'm not going to go back to that place. I'll probably be very scared also of churches in general. Unfortunately, if that's my first experience, it might be my last experience, because I might think that this is how all churches are and this is how all priests are. But supposing I happen to go to maybe Margaon Church, and the priest over there maybe even used the same story in the sermon, but he didn't do all that kind of stuff to say, hold those kind of views that the priest from the other church had. Okay, so he made it a point to keep the responsibility where it was. He was accepting. He was uh, not against any particular groups. He was accepting diversity. Okay, he wasn't like blaming people's clothes or saying that their character is a particular way because of what they are wearing. I'm more likely to go to that other church again, even if that church is 15 kilometers away from me and the other church is like a 5-minute walk for me. I will not go to this church. I'll go to the other one. So a lot of times, when people speak in everyday conversations, the things that they laugh at that are jokes, things that they share on social media, it all gives other people hints about whether what this person's mindset is. What they believe in, whether this person can be trusted or not. If somebody posts like a lot of homophobic jokes, you know that this person probably has that kind of view. You're not going to trust the person. If somebody is posting like rape jokes and they think that it's funny, no one's going to like. Victim is not going to go up to them and open up to them. Okay, so that is how with individuals, okay, it kind of happens wherein you assess whether the person is a safe person or not. Now with institutions, what you can do is you can blatantly like say that our institution believes this kind of thing or supports this kind of thing. Okay, like uh, if you put out posts supporting or giving information about a particular topic, like if you give a lot of information about sexual abuse, then people know that you're an organization that's going to help you. Okay, so they'll feel comfortable about it. Unfortunately, there are some organizations also who will post really strange things like transphobic things, queerphobic things. So that is one way that an organization can do it. A lot of times the organization will have goals also, right? So maybe in adherence to their goals, if they can put out the message to people, that would be helpful. Does that answer it?
It does.
Okay.
And
Right. Yeah.
actually, I should say it actually answers in a very nice way because this, Francis will know this is one question that has been bothering me since, I don't know,
Uh-huh.
I guess 3 years, 4 years, but I never really got a very, a very satisfactory answer. It's always it's like if the person wants to talk to you, come to you. But then this question answers hats on. Perfect.
Actually, people will know, like they will, if you're actually somebody who is going to listen to somebody who is an accepting person, or people will know it by your actions only. So as you say, actions speak louder than words. But if you're somebody who says I accept somebody, and then you're like saying something that is like racist or casteist or sexist, then automatically people pick up on that. So yeah.
People pick up all the hints.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so now I'll just speak about coping skills. And if anybody later on has any more coping skills to add, please add them on. So the first thing that I'll speak about is distractions. So unfortunately, distractions have a very bad reputation. We're always told not to be distracted by things, but actually at times distractions can be lifesavers, especially in situations wherein people feel very suicidal, or they feel like they're going to take some impulsive decision. Distractions actually help because it keeps your mind occupied, or keeps your mind away from thinking about something. So distractions can be music, Netflix, reading, anything that helps you. It's fine. It doesn't have to be something that's productive. It's if it's life saving, it's valuable. Okay. The second thing that might require to you to be like I mean, it might require to be in some have some level of processing done, is to identify your triggers. Once you know your triggers, you have full rights to step out of that situation. Like as I also we had told you before. At this time also, if you feel triggered, please step out. You can always leave the conversation. That's like within your full rights. Unfortunately, in our Indian culture, we feel that if someone's talking and we don't like what they're saying and we tell them not to talk about it and they still talk about it, that we have to bear it. You don't have to bear it. You can just leave the conversation. You can leave the situation. Okay. If at some point you are able to, then you can work through your triggers. But the beginning point comes at identifying a trigger. Okay. Then the third one is disputing thought patterns. So there are a lot of ways to dispute thought patterns. And what I mean by thought patterns is that a lot of times people get a lot of negative thoughts and irrational thoughts. And then those thoughts kind of wreak havoc on the mind. Uh, so disputing thought patterns, there are many, many, many ways. Okay. But I feel that the simplest and most effective way of disputing a thought is to ask yourself, is the thought helpful? Okay. uh, when you ask yourself that, there are two options now that you get, is yes, the thought is helpful in some way, or no, the thought is not helpful. So if the answer is yes, then you can think about ways wherein this thought is actually helping you and you could do something about it. But if the thought is not helpful and there's nothing you can do about it, it's an irrational thought, it's a thought that's really negative and it's like really putting you down, maybe making you blame yourself. And as weird as it is, okay, tell yourself, even if you have to tell yourself loudly, that this thought is unhelpful, and by my mind keeping on replaying these thoughts, it's actually causing me harm. So you can write it down also. When I've done this, I've written it down. So that automatically does help your mind calm down a lot more the minute it knows that this thought is not helpful. Okay, then the third one is identify and accept emotions. So as I always say, that emotions are there for a reason, especially primary emotions. It tells you something about why you're feeling that way. Like a lot of people see anger in a negative light, but anger is not always negative. Like a lot of the changes that happen around here have happened because people are angry. uh, right? There would be no like social justice or things like that if there was no anger. Like I remember the day the Pope, said something that was like he said to be accepting of people and not to be homophobic. Uh, that was a big day. And the reason that happened is that people were angry that the church or the institution of the church is saying these kind of things, and it's not okay. So that anger can actually do a big thing. Okay, so it has to obviously be channelized in a way that is not harmful, but the emotion itself is not harmful, is not a bad thing. Okay, unfortunately, in situations like this, we might have inappropriate, emotions that are inappropriate to the situation, wherein you might feel guilt when you are the victim, and you might feel shame when you are the victim. Actually, you didn't do anything, right? It's not your fault at all. So in these situations, when you feel those emotions, you can't fight that emotion. If you fight it, it's going to get more intense. Okay, so you can accept that the emotion has come, but you can also accept that you are not at fault, and you can remind yourself that this emotion has come due to social conditioning. It's not something that you've actually done wrong. It's just that you've heard again and again, you've heard people saying these kind of things, and it's caused shame and it's caused guilt. It's because of the stigma. So that realization, when it comes to your mind, it makes a huge difference. It seems like a very, very small thing, but it actually makes a huge difference. And the last one is what Sharbu spoke about, which is how do we be so he spoke about how we should be safe people. So what I was speaking about here is how to find safe people, which I already spoke about earlier. Is that a lot of times you can tell whether a person is safe or not by the things that they say, the kind of jokes that they're making. When somebody else is saying something, how do they respond? uh, in general, when they tell you information about maybe something they read on the paper, what is their tone like? Who are they blaming? What are their views on this? Okay, so if you know that if somebody is regularly posting things about say feminism, or speaking about rights, then this person is likely to be a person who has a lot of knowledge, and they are going to listen to you, and they're actually going to help you out, as opposed to somebody who is posting all sorts of things that are not so nice. Okay, so that will give you a clue whether the person is safe or not. Okay, so does anybody else have any other coping skill that maybe would be helpful for us to know?
I think this would come under distractions itself, maybe. Probably like, just going for a walk on the beach or just hanging out with individuals without, talking about any uneventful like incidents. Just, just kind of, getting that adrenaline rush, kind of just
Yeah.
moving through your body and uplifting you in a way.
Okay.
Taking ourselves away from the environment that is making us, taking ourselves away from that environment. I would, I guess that's what Francis wants to say. Like maybe if it's happening in our house, or so we're just going out, taking a walk, so
Yeah.
finding a beach, finding a hill, a grassland, anything that makes us comfortable, makes us, connect to.
Yeah, so I think what you're speaking about also brings in that element of mindfulness, and being in that, I mean, distraction, but also in that kind of environment that is not very, what do you say, filled with a lot of stuff, that's kind of peaceful.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, without any like toxicity around.
Yeah.
Also,
So,
Okay. So that is it for me, from my side. If you have any questions, or if you have anything to add also, that would be, I'd like to hear. I mean, I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so if at any point you want to reach out to me, also like if you want to ask me anything also about this session, you can always email me or drop me a text. I'm open to that. And yeah, so thank you so much, and that's it from me.
yeah, thank you so much, Lareina, for like, giving us so much of insightful pointers as to like, how we can cope with a situation in case we do happen to go through it, and how we as individuals can be more empathetic towards the victims of any sort of abuse, not just specifically sexual abuse. And yeah, that was really, really nice. So thank you so much for that.
All right. Thanks. I had a lovely time with you.
Yeah, same here. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Lareina, she has mentioned her contact details here. You can get in touch with her, by noting these details down. So she does. Uh, I'm. I guess she does. Take on clients for therapy sessions also. So you can definitely reach out to her. You can also find her details on our website, goarainbowtrust.com, under the professionals, section. So thank you once again for doing this. It's a very sensitive topic, and thank you for navigating through it very sensitively. And so thank you for everyone who joined also. Without you, I'm pretty sure many did not join, probably because it is a very sensitive topic, probably triggering. So it's understandable. But for all of you who joined, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay.
And have a good night.
Yes, you too. All of you, good night.
Bye.